Last month, Donald Trump signed an executive order targeting pharmaceutical companies, accusing them of overcharging Americans for prescription drugs, while other countries enjoy far lower prices. The order directs the Department of Health, led by Robert F. Kennedy Jr., to set price targets for drug makers, a move that sparked concerns about government-imposed price controls. Historically, such price controls have often given rise to unintended negative consequences. The order also proposes letting Americans buy medicines directly from manufacturers, cutting out middlemen. That shook the market. Major health insurers and pharmacy benefit managers, PBMs, like CVS, Cigna, and United Health saw stock prices drop significantly. Many investors may believe Trump is all bark and no bite. Still, this moment is worth using to dig into a deeper question. Why are drug prices so high in America? And do they really need to be this high to drive innovation? Research from last year shows Americans pay nearly 3 times more for prescription drugs than people in other countries. But as with everything in healthcare, it's not that simple. The biggest price gap is in brand-name drugs, which cost over 4 times more in the US than elsewhere. But here's a twist. Generic drugs, which make up 90% of prescriptions by volume, cost only 67% of the price in most countries. So why the disparity? The answer lies in how new drugs are introduced and priced. In countries like Canada and the UK, the process for introducing a new drug involves 3 key steps, all involving some form of government oversight. First, the drug must be proven safe and effective. Second, a public regulatory body evaluates whether the drug is worthwhile, weighing factors like side effects, the existence of similar treatments, and cost-effectiveness. Finally, a centralized health authority, like the NHS in the UK, negotiates directly with pharmaceutical companies on behalf of the entire population. This unified approach gives them substantial bargaining power, often resulting in bulk discounts or rejection of overpriced or marginally beneficial drugs. In contrast, the US system involves just one government checkpoint, the FDA, which approves drugs based solely on safety and effectiveness. After that, the drug enters a fully privatized market, where thousands of fragmented health plans each negotiate separately with manufacturers. None of them command enough volume to secure the kinds of steep discounts seen in countries with centralized pricing systems. But the pharmaceutical companies and PBMs argue that American patients get faster access to new drugs with fewer insurance barriers. For instance, between 2012 and 2021, 85% of new drugs debuted in the US, compared to just 59% in the UK and 45% in Canada. Also, US has been the first market where majority of the new drugs were launched primarily because of how the system is currently designed. But that access often comes at a price. In 2016, Americans were outraged when the price of EpiPens surged to $300 per dose, more than triple the cost in other developed countries. On the other hand, that same time, the UK saw its own protests, not over high prices but over lack of access. A drug for cystic fibrosis, or CAMBI, was available in the US for $270,000 per patient per year. But in UK, the NHS negotiated a 50% discount and still found the drug too expensive and rejected it. So patients in US do get access to new and improved treatments faster, although at higher cost. Pharma companies argue that US is the only market where these drugs remain financially viable due to the high cost of development. This raises an important question. Why is drug development so expensive in the first place? To understand that, we need to go back in time. In 1937, when a poorly prepared antibiotic caused a mass poisoning in the US, killing over 100 people. The scandal led Congress to pass the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, requiring companies to prove new drugs were safe. Then came the thalidomide tragedy in the 1950s. In response, a 1962 amendment added a new requirement. Drugs must be proven effective, not just safe. Testing new drugs has become more rigorous and more time-consuming. The trade-offs are real. Delay approvals too long, and life-saving treatments get withheld. Approved too fast, and public safety could be at risk. In the 1980s, AIDS activists pressured the FDA to move faster. This led to more flexible pathways for patients with fatal diseases. In 1983, the Orphan Drug Act was passed to encourage research on rare diseases. It offered extended exclusivity and faster approval processes for drugs that might otherwise be unprofitable to develop. The Prescription Drug User Fee Act of 1992 allowed the FDA to charge companies fees to speed up reviews. FDA review times dropped from 3 years in the 1980s to under 1 year by 2017, but the total time from clinical testing to approval has stayed steady at about 8 years. Interestingly, research from Yale shows the FDA is still faster than its European, Canadian, and Japanese counterparts. Beyond the lengthy development and approval process, the high failure rate of experimental drugs further drives up the cost. Only about 12% of experimental drugs make it to market. In 2024, the industry spent $276 billion on R&D. That same year, the FDA approved just 50 new drugs. That means, on average, $5.52 billion was spent in R&D per approved drug. And that's before manufacturing, marketing, and distribution costs. Plus, not every new drug becomes a blockbuster. Many are just marginal improvements. Once approved, new drugs get about 12 years of exclusivity before competitors can release alternatives. That's their window to recoup costs and make a profit. But it's not guaranteed, as in US, doctors, hospitals, and PBMs primarily control the distribution. Under Medicare rules, doctors buy drugs up front and charge a percentage-based fee on top. That creates an incentive to prescribe more expensive drugs. Then there are pharmacy benefit managers, PBMs. These companies negotiate discounts for insurers and employers, but their profits often depend on the size of the discount, not the final price. That means they have an incentive to work with drugs that have high list prices so they can take a bigger cut of the discount. If Trump's actions, as mentioned in White House fact sheet, work in lowering the list prices, PBMs, not drug makers, could take the biggest financial hit, which might actually be a good thing. There's no question the system is broken, but fixing it isn't simple. We face a three-way balancing act between price, availability, and innovation. There's no silver bullet, but there are smarter questions we can ask and better conversations we can have about how to build a healthcare system that works for everyone. Thanks for watching. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.